This is a product called the I'm Back Film that's supposed to turn your favorite old vintage film camera into a high-resolution digital camera. Now, already half of you think that's a pretty cool idea, and the other half think that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. Trust me, I know. I've been sharing about this for weeks now on my Instagram, and the comment sections are hilarious. But first, let me just show you how it all works, because like it or not, it's kind of genius. Okay, genius might be a strong word, but there's some good engineering here, mixed with some just plain awful ideas that we'll get to. But first off, this is the latest iteration of many different attempts by the same Swiss-based company called I'm Back for over a decade, with each new version getting more compact and slim while the sensor was getting larger. This is the latest released version that I have here with the 20 megapixel micro four thirds size sensor. Each version had their own Kickstarter, generating hundreds of thousands of dollars each time. Each time backers waited a long time, usually years, to eventually receive a product that sort of worked and sort of didn't. Some apparently, according to the comment sections, are still waiting for their backed product. And talking about this now is especially relevant because I'm Back, the company that made this, just announced a few weeks ago their latest attempt at this, an upgraded APS-C 26 megapixel version that slimmed down and on paper seems like a pretty good deal. Their Kickstarter they started for that project has over $1 million at the time of recording, which is crazy. Before you go out and rush and back that project, get in on the hype, you should watch this video and see why maybe you should be a little bit hesitant. Okay, but this version comes in this cool oversized film roll plastic container that maybe I can restyle in the future. Brand new, this kit would have cost you a staggering $800 USD to buy, which is just crazy, and waited 2 years to receive it. I got this one on eBay, brand new, unused, taxed and shipped to me for $89, which was awesome. Supposedly from a backer who waited a long time, received the project, opened up the top lid, and decided this wasn't for them and to sell it at a huge loss on eBay. If that doesn't tell you how customers felt about this product, just keep watching. In this canister, there's the sensor itself, which is mostly a bare chip, but connected to some electronics in the film canister. And the main unit, which houses the LCD screen and the battery and mounts to the bottom of the camera, is down here. Now, this thing is a huge source of controversy, adding to the bulk of the whole setup. And that new APS-C version they keep teasing promises to get rid of this entirely. But I promise you, after using this for a while, this isn't even the worst part, not even by a long shot. There's also a bunch of filter adapters in the box, and then also this lens attachment, which is interesting. Some of you might have already thought of this problem of putting a micro four thirds cropped smaller sensor into a 35 millimeter camera, and that is that your frame that you see through the viewfinder is not going to be the actual image you get. It's going to be a cropped image. To solve this, or at least work around it, I'm Back did two different things. One, they included these little masks that you can put on the mirror of your camera to get a more predictable view of what you're going to get in the end, and that works out just fine. And then two, they included this attachment lens piece, which you can put on front of the lens for a wider angle view, effectively giving you the field of view that you would expect you would originally get from shooting that film frame. Now, this back is supposed to be universal. It's designed to fit in most 35 millimeter film cameras. In fact, the original advertising says it will fit in all 35 millimeter film cameras, which seems too good to be true. So we're just going to pick one here. This is my old Spotmatic, one of my all-time favorite film cameras. I'm following the instructions just as they came in the box. The first step is to remove the film pressure plate from your camera, and this isn't too tricky. Next, you place down an included sticker that'll help you center the sensor later. Then you place the sensor down, being careful not to break it in the 1 million ways you definitely could lose all your money right now. It fits very snugly between the two film guide rails on this camera, so this was really tricky to not break anything. Also, every camera is going to have slightly different distance from the film roll to the center of the image box. So the sensor here is actually adjustable left to right to get it centered, which does work. Okay, this next step, I kid you not, once you got the sensor in place, then you tape it. You use that tape and tape it in place. I was wondering how it held its place, and that's the answer is you tape it. Next, you shut the film door, making sure the flat ribbon cable doesn't get severed here, which I personally don't see a way that this is possible, at least not on my camera. All the edges on my Spotmatic are metal and meant to remove any light leaks, and that means the tolerances are pretty tight. So every time I tried to close the back, it was literally chopping the cable. And I read that several other backers had the same issue, even accidentally cutting the cable and having to buy a new one. And this must be so much of a problem that I'm back in the official instructions has a little section saying, if you cut the cable, here's how you buy a new one. Like, you don't get one. It's like, here's how you have to now buy a new one. Anyway, we're not closing the film back and destroying this cable before I even get a chance to shoot this once. So forgive the film door being ajar for the rest of the video. With that set up, we can get our first look at the sensor inside the film camera.
Let's see if we see the sensor. Now, I do have a plastic cover on there still, so if you see the sensor's all super dirty, there is a plastic covering on there. But that's pretty good. It's like a little sideways, but that's the other thing is that it's going to be so hard not to have it slightly tilted.
And if you can't tell already, this whole video is going to come off a little bit negative just because I'm being honest about using this product. But I don't want to throw everything under the bus. Like, there is some cool things the engineers came up with to make this possible. Like, it is cool seeing such a large sensor in such a small package, generally speaking. But yeah, maybe just not a great product. But to get this to work, remember there's a whole other piece, the control and power unit. This attaches via the bottom of the camera's tripod mount and will vary and fit because remember, this is supposed to be universal. This piece is super light and built with cheap plastic. Not a lot going on here, so I entirely believe that it's possible their next model can get rid of this entirely like they promised. Really, it's just here to hold the common rechargeable and removable battery. It also has a few ports on it. It has a USB-C port for downloading pictures and a SD card slot. The new version uses internal memory and a non-removable battery, so both downgrades there. And there's this nice little excess cable here after plugging the sensor in, and we have everything we need to take a picture now.
I'm so dumb, but I just realized this. I think this is the shutter button. So you don't even get to use your real shutter button. Well, that just blows up so much of the argument that this is all about using this camera. So the way they suggest to put the shutter button is on the back. That kind of makes sense with your thumb. I wish there was a way to put it on the top, I guess, but then the top has your controls and your shutter button from the actual camera. So it's on the back for your thumb, but then the plug-in for the sync port is on the side. So you either wrap it around the front and under the camera like they have here, or around the other side and then it's just in the front. Like, this is crazy. Why isn't it over here then if that was the design?
This button will fire the electronic shutter, but remember the SLR has a mirror in the way. So you first have to frame your shot through the viewfinder, then lock up the mirror somehow. I'm just using bulb mode on this one because it doesn't have mirror lockup, and then fire the dedicated shutter to get a shot. And let me slow down to make this point clear. Once again, that means you're not using the shutter of your actual camera to trigger the picture on the I'm back, which you then use this shutter. So you're not using this to take a picture, you're using this. Right. Well, let's say you get past all these little bit of clumsiness of using the product. How are the actual images and using the camera? I will say that the detail here is pretty good. This is a high resolution sensor after all, it should be, and these vintage lenses can still pack a punch. However, there are some problems. The highlight clipping is just awful. Some of the worst I've ever seen. Now, if you keep the highlights under control, you expose for the highlights, you're going to be okay. But if any of those highlights even slightly blow out and they blow out quickly, they look awful. And I'm a little confused about this because their marketing images don't seem to have this issue. I don't know if this is just my copy or I'm just poorly exposing. I need to learn how to expose correctly on this. And as a side note, the camera can take raw photos, but none of my editors will open them. And I have a lot of different editors. And maybe this isn't very fair to say to the product, but at this point, I'm just not confident it would even help. So I kind of gave up. There's also an enormous amount of jello shake and rolling shutter here. So you really got to be careful that both you and your subjects aren't moving in the picture. There's a few image JPEG presets you can play with, but I didn't find any of them that great. But if you get past all that and you shoot very intentionally, your shots look, I mean, they're not bad. They're just at best worse than just buying a much cheaper existing Micro Four Thirds camera and adapting your vintage lens to it, which by the way, I highly recommend. If anything about this idea appeals to you, just buy a cheap Micro Four Thirds camera, get some cheap metal adapters, some cheap vintage lenses, and go crazy. It'll be a ton of fun. It'll be much cheaper and the results will be much better. Now we got to talk about the new version that they're trying to release right now because this is important. On paper, it fixes a lot of these problems. It doesn't have this bulky bottom piece. It looks like it doesn't have a dedicated shutter, like it's just going to detect when that shutter on your camera moves to fire the electronic shutter or something, which would be a big fix, I guess. And it's actually half the price of this one, I think, like $400 for the Kickstarter for a larger sensor, a better design. So it's very tempting, but here's a few more thoughts before you rush in there and click buy. Before you put your money down on a new product, check the company history. Now, to be fair to I'm Back, they have actually delivered their products. So it's not like vaporware like some Kickstarters are. So I do want to give them credit. I'm not going to, like throw them under the bus for that. But it has taken them a while every time to finally deliver the product. And then it's always not quite been, at least from the feedback I've been looking online, what people thought it was going to be. As far as I can tell, their products have all worked. They've just been clunky and underwhelming. But let's just give it the benefit of the doubt and everything goes perfectly. It's actually an awesome product. I still just don't think it's worth being the beta tester, like first people to put down your money, wait a year, 2 years to receive it before any independent reviewers have seen it. Like I know that Kickstarter discount, early bird discount seems so tempting, but that money is just well worth it just waiting, in my opinion. So if you really love this idea of putting a digital sensor in your film camera, just bookmark that project. It's already been funded and just wait would be my advice. I really wish them the best and that it works and it's just like the perfect product. That would be great, especially for everyone who backed it. From a nerdy perspective, I do think it's cool, but now that I've actually used it, like, yeah, the magic is worn off. It's like, I'd much rather just shoot film when I'm using my film camera and then use like a retrofitted digital camera with adapters for vintage lenses. I told you that Yashica is associated with I'm Back, so you should definitely check out my video I made on the Yashica Y35, which might still go down as the worst camera Kickstarter ever. It's hilarious video and just such a funny piece of tech. So check out that video. I'll see you over there. And until next time, as always, happy snapping.